Hello everyone, welcome to Voice of Russia for you. Long time no see. I'm very glad to see you here, my friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please don't forget to click the link that provides subscription to my channel. I hope you won't regret it in the future. So guys, today's topic would be how English language or foreign languages were taught back in the Soviet Union. Why did I decide to speak about this? The reason for this, the main reason for this is that, probably you know that very few Russians can fluently speak foreign languages, in particular English. So that's why I wanted to tell you, to give you some perspectives on how the foreign languages teaching was arranged back in the Soviet Union. So, normally foreign languages were taught starting the 4th grade. It's, I've already forgotten, since starting the 10 years old time and until the last grade at school. So from the 4th to the starting the 4th and to the 10th grade. So for 6 years at school, then for 4 or 5 years at the university. And the most shocking thing is that after such a long period of foreign languages study, people were unable to use these languages. And of course it brings on a reasonable question: why? As we know, we had one of the best educational systems in the Soviet Union, but at the same time, this one of the best in the world educational systems was unable to provide decent foreign languages teaching process. Why? So, first of all, I want to tell you what we basically learned at our English classes. We learned a lot of formal English. We would learn, of course, we started with studying the alphabet pronunciation. Of course, the standard British pronunciation was used for that, but very few could master it. And of course, a lot of people spoke with a heavy accent. And mostly we were taught how to read formal articles and translate them with a dictionary. And of course it was no fun, and thus we were unable to use a proper conversational language. Such a thing as prepositional phrases or phrasal verbs practically wasn't taught at all. The only phrasal verbs we learned were like to stand up, to sit down, to wake up, and something like this. And as I have already said, after 10 years of English language study, people were unable to use this language. So, how did I cope with this situation? At first it was a very boresome process to me, as for others. I didn't like to learn to study English, but someday I fell in love with the Beatles rock group. I fell in love with their music, and I became interested in what they were singing. So luckily I had a friend of mine whose father worked for some international company, and he traveled abroad quite a lot, and he brought um, some records of the Beatles, and it were small tape cassettes, and these tape cassettes included some lyrics in Japanese and in English. So I was happy to uh, take these lyrics and translate them into Russian. Of course, it was very difficult because, as you must understand, I wasn't able to translate the phrasal verbs. Like, for example, the song "Don't Let Me Down" was very difficult for me to be translated because I couldn't understand what it meant. Don't let me down. I was able to understand each single word, uh, but I couldn't understand the phrase in the whole. So it was very difficult for me. To me. So guys, so it was my first small breakthrough. So when I started to translate the Beatles songs, of course, thus I learned a lot of vocabulary, and I started at least, to feel the language. Of course, it was a very slight feeling, but nevertheless, it was already something. After that, I remember when I traveled to Egypt for the first time. It was in 1992. It was a very brief shopping tour. It was the period when Russians started to go abroad. Of course, I was very excited about this trip, and I decided to prepare myself for this trip. And once I learned that I would go to Egypt, I bought a dictionary. I bought a conversational phrasing book. So this book was, in my opinion, it was the perfect book. So I learned all the phrases which were in this book. I didn't understand a lot about the grammar, but the phrases and the words I learned perfectly, and I could use these conversational phrases easily, and I was very happy that I could do it. So that was probably my second breakthrough. And further on, my mother gave me a very old book that was published, I believe, in the 1950s. And it was unexpectedly very useful, and it was written, the authors that wrote this book, they did a great job. I was impressed by this book. Probably it was designed for for teaching those who were supposed to work abroad, probably because it had significant difference to what we learned at school. So further on, I studied at a banking technical school that is very similar to American and British colleges. English was taught there as well. I honestly I don't remember very much of this English study. Then it was 3 years of a university, it was the University of Finance and Economics. So, English, I think the university English wasn't very useful. So, in other words, I can make a summary that practically none of the formal English study gave me something. So everything I achieved was done on my own. So let's go further. For several years, I forgot English because, of course, I didn't forget it. I just put it off, I would say. You know, for several years I didn't touch it because I didn't have any opportunity to use it. I didn't go abroad, I didn't communicate with foreigners until the year 2006. Back then I worked at a bank, and by the time I had been working at this bank for almost 10 years, and I had become bored with this work, and I started to think of switching my job. And I thought to myself, why don't I look for something somehow related to interaction with foreigners? Maybe it might be work at some international company or something like this. So I looked up some courses at a school that was called American Language Center. So I bought 1 month courses at this school. It was summer of 2006. So I went to this 1 month courses, and you know, I think I've never seen anything that useful in my life related to English as these 1 month courses. You know, these courses I met a wonderful teacher, an American guy, Daniel Melby. We became great friends with him, and we're still in touch. So what Dan did, first of all, he gave us plenty of the prepositional phrases and phrasal verbs. It was fantastic. You know, I started to understand so much that I just couldn't understand before, because it just out of my reach, because just we didn't know about such things as, I'll try to explain it to you. For example, we basically learned such verbs as, you know, so-called I'm sorry, I forgot the proper term. Academic verbs like to arrive, to approach, to postpone. For example, I could understand the phrase, my boss approached me and said that he would postpone my business trip. I was able to understand such a phrase, but I couldn't understand a phrase like, my boss came up to me and said he would put off my business trip. So came up and put off was something that I couldn't understand, and not only me. So our teacher then gave us understanding of all this great stuff, and you know, it was the only 1 month of English learning, English study at a school. After that, starting the summer of 2006 and up to these days, I've been doing everything to keep up and improve my language on my own. So what am I doing now, and what have I been doing for all this time? I've been using a lot of YouTube stuff. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos. First of all, I've been watching videos with those people who are interesting to me. These are my favorite actors, my favorite athletes, whatever. And mostly I watch interviews, because during these interviews I see live communication. So people speak their real everyday language, and I appreciate it a lot. So YouTube gave me a lot of opportunity that allows me to keep mastering my English. And so it was something like this. So I think I can fairly say that I have mastered English to the degree I'm able to use it now practically on my own and with help of these 1-month courses. Thank you very much, my dear friend Dan. And you know, and of course I want to get back to the question about how come that Soviet Union had such a weird foreign languages teaching program. And you know, guys, I don't like all these conspiracy theories, but I can't help thinking of that it was arranged deliberately. So probably our state didn't want our citizens to be able to speak with foreigners. They didn't want them to be able to exchange thoughts, to be able to learn something from them. That's why the educational program was arranged the way that prevented this ability to communicate with foreigners. I understand that it sounds a little bit crazy, but I can't come up with anything but this. And the other proof is that, you know, nevertheless, there were enough of those in the Soviet Union who had great expertise in English. I mean, those who worked for some international companies, who worked at the diplomatic group, who worked as spies, for example, who worked as translators and interpreters. So it means that when it was needed, our state was able to teach those people to speak English. I'm sorry, I didn't mention other foreign languages because, you know, I can't take on such a responsibility because, you know, I was learning English, and I can't say for other languages, but nevertheless I know that, you know, basically we had two groups of students. One part of the students was learning English, and the other basic part of the students was learning German. There were some students who learned French, but I don't remember such at our school. So, but as far as I remember, those who studied German, they didn't feel better than those who studied English. So something like this. Well, guys, so that's it for today. I hoped my story was interesting enough for you. So if you like it, don't forget to give me your thumbs up, and see you next time. Bye.